Hey and welcome. I'm Dave and you are listening to Life Is Peachy, a nostalgia-fueled podcast that allows me to sit here and waffle on about the bands and the albums that became the soundtrack to my life. Growing up in the 90s, the early 2000s, and while we're at it, sharing a few memories from Her Name Is Murder Productions. How are we today, Lips? I hope you're feeling good and in the vibe. I definitely must be feeling that indigo flow because just recently in episode 22 of the Life Is Peachy Podcast, I chatted with Sonny Mayo about my first introduction to Amen. Thanks to and through the truly epic Roadrunner Records free CD sampler, Heavy, Bend Your Knees.
There can be only one.
Though the track listing was short and sweet, it packed a punch. So much so that I think I still need to break it down a little more with regards to this podcast and what you're currently listening to right now. Episode 24.
Back on top, man.
Thanks, Billy. You rock.
No, you rock.
Compilation obviously featured Amen, and yeah, if you're a fan, I recommend checking out episode 22 as we go deep into their 1999 Roadrunner self-titled. And in exciting news, today's guest has an extensive history with the record label and has also worked with Amen in more recent years through live and session work.
Sweet.
But more of that later. Back to bending our knees for the sake of all things heavy.
Get on with the ceremony.
If we work our way through the CD sampler, it's clear to see this was a magical time for Roadrunner at the turn of the century, and just a magical time in general for highly impressionable teens, such as myself, loving their heavy music. First up, we have a band simply called Out, and I'd love to do an episode with this obscure band from France and explore their only Roadrunner release, Exposition, as besides the album itself, there's just not really much information and history out there. So if anyone from Out is listening, or any French fans out there have the hookups, it's time to help me out.
Let's make this one happen.
Next up, Spine Shank, and well, their third and final album released under Roadrunner Self-Destructive Pattern turns 20 later this year. So let's just keep that in mind, and don't forget to head over to the second channel, the Life Is Peachy Mixtape sessions, where you can listen to track 4 and my interview with Johnny Santos and Silent Civilian's Return. Slipknot, self-titled, celebrates a quarter of a century next year. I tried my luck with Craig Jones just recently. You can hear the results for yourself on track 7 of the mixtape sessions. Who would you love to see from Slipknot on the podcast celebrating the album's anniversary in 2024? And then there is Fear Factory, and well, my favorite album from them hits the big 2.5 in 2023. As Burden cried out in 1998, man is obsolete, erased, extinct. I wonder what he thinks of obsolete these days. Are his memories erased, extinct, or ready for a deep dive in July? And then we arrive at Soulfly and their track Boomba. Surrounded by good company and sitting safe and sound as track 5 on 1998's Soulfly album, Max Calavera's self-titled Roadrunner Records debut, released 2 years after the Ross Robinson-produced juggernaut Roots, Max's final outing with Brazil's Sepultura. Once again with Ross at the helm and captured at, yup, you guessed it, Indigo Ranch.
It's science.
What great albums weren't being recorded here during this period of time? So now you can understand why I have that indigo flow.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
2023 marks the 25th anniversary of Soulfly's first introduction of music in a post-Max Sepultura world. Something most of us are accustomed to by now, but it's not easy to forget what a huge crack this was in the timeline of heavy music. As far as modern metal tragedies go, the division of divisions, one that still lingers today.
To be or not to be. Not to be.
In 1998, Sepultura would return hard-hitting with the Derek Green-fronted, one of my all-time favorite albums and my favorite Sep album, period. With an amazing back catalogue featuring both Max and Derek, Sepultura have continued to evolve and push the envelope in their progressive and thematic songwriting. And I've been lucky enough to document some of that journey, specifically their most recent 2 albums, recorded in Sweden with Jens Bogren at Fascination Street Studios.
Yeah, wow. David is incredible, and he's added so much to the visuals of letting people really see the true Sepultura of what's really going on with us. And I love working with Dave. I'm looking forward to doing more with him in the future, and his work is phenomenal. You know, it just really touches a lot of people, and I've heard such amazing feedback from everything that we've worked on with him.
Machine Messiah and 2020's Quadra, both exceptionally well received by fans and critics alike, and seemingly turning the tide for some who waved only the Calavera flag.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
From fan to filmmaker, from posters on my bedroom wall to creating documentaries for one of my all-time favorite bands, what's the easiest way to say it? I'm just a Sepultura fan. It's as simple as that. In all shapes and sizes, albums and era, I love Sepultura. It's not this or that, one or the other, it is just Sepultura. I'm so excited today because we go back to a period of time with so much magic, emotion, and legacy all being created up within the mountains of the Malibu Canyons. Lip listeners will of course know Ross Robinson and Indigo Ranch come up quite often across the universe of episodes, and some albums have been featured in the Lip back catalogue. The Burning Red with Rob Flynn.
We spent maybe 6 weeks there, way the fuck up in the mountains of Malibu. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. It is treacherous, you know, driving on one-lane roads with a cliff down the side. I hated it after a while. It's just too much, too far away from everything. We had a lot of parties, man. Like, holy shit. It was insane. Like, we were maniacs. People would drive 25 miles, last 7 miles, just all like cliffside to like have parties at our thing. We had some ragers up there.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Amen's self-titled and Vanilla Ice's Hard to Swallow in episode 22.
There were times when multiple bands that Ross was producing, those bands being Amen, Machine Head, and Slipknot, our first record, Slipknot's first record, and...
The Burning Red.
Burning Red, thank you. But I'd lived at Indigo while we were doing those records, but it's out in the middle of Malibu, and we had guitar tracks to do. It was me and Ross were recording that day. And Ross is like, hey man, let's go on a hike real quick before we do your tracks. And I wasn't in shape. I wasn't exercising at the time. My exercise was being on stage. And so we go off on this trail, and we literally go off the trail down this crazy embankment, dude, that had to be like 60 degrees. Ross is nuts and awesome. He's fucking so rad. And then we try to run as fast as we could back up the thing. So we're running up these rocks and climbing up this hill. And dude, I reached a point of utter exhaustion. Like, I got to the top of this hill, back to the trail that led back to the house. And I just like, and I puked all over the place. Everything came up. And Ross was like, yeah. It was so metal. He was like, yeah. He was so excited about me puking all over the place. And he's like, let's go, man. We got to go record right now. And I was like, but, and he's like, come on. And I went in the room, and I drank maybe some water or something, and he put a guitar on me. And he's like, let's go. And he turned it up so loud. I'm killing it. And somehow I'm like, this shit's coming out of me. I'm just like, ah. And then we finish, and Ross goes, we're going to do that every time before you record guitars from now on. Great. Oh, no.
Say something for the record. Tell the people what you feel. Fuck the record and fuck the people.
And Mikey Doling spoke of recording Absent at Indigo Ranch, the final official Snot track with the OG lineup back in episode 4.
We went up to Indigo Ranch to work with Ross Robinson. We went in, you know what bands, they don't get along sometimes. You know, they have their problems. And Lynn and Sonny were kind of at each other's throat at that time. We started tracking Absent, which was awesome. The song was cool. I loved recording it. But, yeah, man, I don't want to keep having shitty stories, man, because, again, Absent's a bad story. I love that song, too. And that song led up to Sonny Mayo leaving Snot.
And now here we are.
Start the music.
With a performing style and expression unlike any other, and a master of their craft who has continued to release amazing, unique, life-lasting musical imprints for so many of us around the world, it's an absolute honor to welcome Roy Mayorga to episode 24 of the Life Is Peachy Podcast. Thank you for your time and your energy as we look back on your amazing history and 25 years of Soulfly's self-titled debut.
Nice to meet you. How you doing, man?
Oh man, I am doing great, and I'm so excited to be here right now and to have this chance to rack your brains.
Great.
And I imagine the 25th anniversary of any album is quite a surreal sentence.
Correct.
Yeah.
I realized towards the end of last year, I'm like, oh my God, 25th anniversary, the first Soulfly album's coming up next year. Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. I was only 27 years old when I recorded that record. We recorded it in 1997.
Yeah, what a trip out. And while I have you and this amazing opportunity for retrospect and reflection, I must warn, I do have a stack of questions.
Fire away.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so I do love to lay down a little foundation work straight up. And as I go, please correct me if I have anything wrong. But I have read that thanks to your parents, you grew up on Motown, rhythm and blues, before eventually becoming a fan of Kiss through your older brother. And then drums at the age of 6.
Correct. All correct.
Yes. Great. Okay. Off to a good start then. Right now, I actually feel like Graham Hartman from Loudwire doing Wikipedia fact or fiction. But at the age of 6, that's quite early. What was that initial attraction to drums from such an early age?
Honestly, I can't explain it. It's more like the drums picks the individual. You don't pick the instrument picks you, I guess. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I just had an attraction to rhythm, to drums. Even before knowing that, my mom saw all that with me, how I was always banging on things, from 1 to 2, 3 years old, just always on the crib, She realized I was a drummer before I even knew the hell I was a drummer. When I saw drums and I heard drums and I saw people playing drums, that automatically just clicked and it went from there.
I like to play.
I can remember actually the first time even touching a drum kit. There was no sticks. I just used my hands. I must have been 4 years old. And I remember I was with my brother and my dad, and we're just going to this flea market. I can remember the drum kit. The color was like a white marine pearl drum kit. I don't know what kind. It could have been a Ludwig. It could have been a Gretsch, a Slingerland. All I remember, it was a snare drum, a kick, a floor, and a rack tom. And I remember the heads being really super dirty and like they'd been on there forever. And I remember walking up to this thing and just recognizing it because of what I saw on TV or whatever. And I started just slamming on it with my hands and stuff like that. I vividly remember this. And I remember my dad probably saw this. It's like, nope, we're not getting that. But then a couple years later, I did get one. My mom would argue with my dad, saying, he has to have a drum kit. He's going to be a drummer. He's like, I don't want a drum kit here. And then, I got a toy drum kit with really thin mylar made out of tin. One of those kind of drum kits you would get at a toy store. Didn't last very long because the mylar was so thin. I just kind of went through it with whatever sticks that came with this thing. It didn't even have a snare drum. It just had 2 rack toms, a kick, and a floor tom, and 1 cymbal. That was it. and I just made that work. That top rag tom was my snare. And I remember putting a frisbee on the cymbal to give it more of like a hi-hat kind of sound, because I had like one of those tin aluminum cheap cymbals that come with a toy drum kit that had these little rivets in it. So I had this like sizzle. So I remember putting like my whammo frisbee on there to give it a hi-hat sound. I had no idea about a hi-hat or any of that stuff. I just heard it. I'm like, okay, I want it to sound more like that. So I remember doing that to achieve that sound when I was playing to the Kiss records or the Zeppelin records.
I have to laugh because I'm imagining the moment you finally got that upgraded kit and you're playing it and just thinking, man, this doesn't sound right. I need my frisbee hi-hat.
Right. Yeah. Well, the upgraded kit came a few years after that. When I was about 8, I had this sparkle blue Ludwig knockoff kit. Back then, it actually cost a lot because we were living in Florida at that time, and there weren't a lot of music stores like Guitar Center or anything like that. It was just more like a mom and pop shop, and they would mark up whatever equipment they have in there, whether it's a knockoff or the real thing. So for back then, they scraped up a lot of money just to get this kit for me. So this kit was just a 4-piece kit. This one had a snare drum. I remember it was like a 20-inch kick, a snare, a rack, a floor, and one cymbal. Again, another one cymbal. And it's funny, to this day, the position of that cymbal is still in that position as I play now. That's never changed.
It's really interesting hearing all of this because my next question was pretty much delving into the development of your playing and how you would describe your style and where those influences came from. After hearing you talk about those earlier off-kilter kits, I feel like a lot of that not only determined your setup, but also the physicality of your playmanship.
Yeah.
You didn't really have that conventional kit in the beginning, and you have such a unique physical and visual style of playing, which is really, really cool and something definitely associated with you.
Thanks. I could generally say everything I've listened to throughout my whole life is an influence, whether it's drumming or it's a certain kind of music or it's like electronic music. It's all in here. It all comes out here somehow. It's not just drums. I mean, it's not just John Bonham or Neil Peart or Stuart Copeland. There's many other influences. I mean, I'm influenced by listening to Jimmy Page, Angus Young, or Ralph Hutter and Florian Schneider from Kraftwerk. My inspirations and influences are pretty wide, and it all translates to whatever instrument I'm playing, whether it's drums or guitar or synthesizers, keyboards.
Speaking of keyboards and that world, as a teenager, my first encounter with your name was seeing it credited along the remix of Chaos BC, which in retrospect has gone on to have somewhat of a legacy stamp in its own right, featuring on the special edition of 1994's Chaos AD, and the remix even opening Sepultura's worldwide tour either during or around that album cycle, I believe.
It did, yeah.
So let's set the scene a little bit before entering the world of Soulfly. What was that history with Sepultura in regards to coming into the tribe and to remix the album's lead single, Refuse Resist? How did that opportunity come about, and where does that love for remixing stem from?
Can I get that in print to answer all of that?
Yes, sorry, man.
No, they're great questions. They're amazing. It's just like, damn, how am I going to decipher all of that in one shot?
Yeah, I do have a habit of these 2, even 3-part questions. My questions within a question.
Right, hang on. All right, let me just figure that one out. Okay, first part of your question. All right, well, it's my relationship with Sepultura and Max. I'll get to all the rest. Okay, here I go.
Sorry.
Max and Igor and I and the rest of the band, we met in summer of '91. They were on tour with Sick of It All, Napalm Death, Sacred Reich. I think we met through the Sick of It All guys, and we made a relationship since then. I was in Nausea at the time. Both like punk. Both love thrash metal. We're big fans of Sepultura. Sepultura was big fans of Nausea. I mean, according to Max and Igor, they were. So, yeah, we just hit it off. And we were already friends with Napalm Death because prior to that, Nausea did some touring with Napalm and Godflesh for that Grind Crusher tour in 1990. So we already had a relationship with them. So it was a lot of camaraderie going on. at that show. It was awesome. And we stayed in touch, here and there. I'd run into Max and Igor throughout up until about 96. But between that, the reason why the Chaos BC remix happens, because at the time I was in this other band called Thorn, who was signed to Roadrunner Records through Howie Abrams, the A&R person at the time there. Next to him in that office was Monty Connor, renowned A&R person who signed everyone from Slipknot to Typo Negative. The list goes on. Like all the biggest metal acts on Roadrunner was from Monty.
Yes, the one and only Monty Connor. Actually, There's a really, really good interview between him and Rob Flynn on Rob's No Effing Regrets podcast.
With Rob Flynn.
I'll link it in this episode's description because it's definitely worth checking out to get a nice overarching insight into some Roadrunner history with regards to the man responsible for signing, I'll just say it, the majority of our favorite bands.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing that Monty was dealing with Sepultura, I came up with this rough idea of a remix, and I basically came to Monty with it on tape. And the reason why this happens because I just bought a bunch of new gear to record the Thorn record. I bought a new sampler, a Kai S1000 sampler. I wanted to test how it sounds compared to the other samplers I have. I had like a bunch of other like emulator stuff and Mirage, which weren't that great, but they sounded great. Wanted to hear what the clarity was like on this Kai S1000. So at the time I was listening to that KSAD album and I sampled the intro to it, the beginning drum intro to Refuse Resist. And I'm like, wow, this sounds great. I kept looping it. And I started adding other stuff to it. I'm like, oh, what would happen if I add this 909 kick drum to this? Oh, what would happen if I add this Sergio Mendes drum fill to it? Oh, what would happen if I started adding my timbale work and more Serto drum stuff to it? Wow, I got this 8-measure loop thing going on, which is the main riff that you hear in that remix. So I recorded like a minute or two of it. And I went to Monty Connor and I played it for him. Like, what do you think of this? He's like, wow, how'd you do this? And I explained to him what I was doing, how I did it. And at that time, remixes were like a popular thing. So I did the same thing. I kind of jumped on the bandwagon of doing that stuff, and I had the idea of making a remix. And I asked Monty, "What do you think? You think these guys would be into having a remix done for Refuse Resist?" I said, "Well, let me play it for the guys." So he sent it to the guys. They gave me the okay. They were stoked about it. Monty gave me all the multi-track reels. I went to a recording studio in New York and took tracks that I wanted and recorded them onto DAT tape at the time. And then went back home and took all those tracks and put them all across my keyboard and just mixed and matched and see what I came up with, and then made the remix that you hear now, that they use live, for their intro for that song or for the intro for their show. Ended up being a Q in a Mortal Kombat movie as well, which is pretty awesome.
Final round, fight.
Chances are most listening know the story of Sepultura, and it's probably safe to say that if you're a fan, then you definitely do. Causing a tremendous ripple in the heavy metal pond, Max's final performance for Sepultura would take place at the Brixton Academy in England on December 16th, 1996. Eventually, from here, the rest of the band would continue on in 1998 with new vocalist Derek Green, and Max would go on to start his new project. And it goes without saying that there is, of course, a lot more nuance here. And so if you are interested in Against and this period of Sepultura's career, you can hear it from Derek Green himself in episode 1 and check out Her Name Is Murder Productions' 2015 documentary with the guys, Under My Skin. You know the drill. You can always find all links in the episode description.
You got a lot of nerve showing your face around here, Hauser.
Look who's talking.
Hey, Tony, give the big guy a break.
Relax. You live longer.
Founded with the idea of combined sounds and spiritual beliefs, the year's 1997, and Soulfly was formed in Los Angeles, California. Along with Max on vocals and guitar, the first incarnation of that core lineup would take shape with yourself on drums and percussion, Marcelo Diaz on bass, and Lucio Meyer, also known as Jackson Bandera, on lead guitar. The band would quickly relocate out of Phoenix, Arizona, and begin writing and rehearsing for what would later transpire as 1998's Self-Titled. And so now, I have perhaps a more straightforward question for you this time around. How did you come to join Soulfly in 97?
Also through Monty Connor. He also contacted me saying that Max is looking for a drummer, and he connected us. I got a demo from Max, a 4-song demo, which had Eye for an Eye on it, Tribe, No. Back to the Primitive before he became Back to the Primitive. So I learned those 4 songs and kind of put more of my twist on it. It's all drum machine and guitar and vocals. It sounded great. Tuned to hell. Tuned to like fucking A or F. It was so fucking heavy. I'm like, what are you tuned to, dude? He's like, I don't know. It just sounds cool to me. I'm like, fair enough.
Now for something completely different.
So I learned those songs and obviously learned a bunch of Sepultura songs just so he could see how I play. Obviously he was going to play some of those songs live, so he wanted to test me out on that. And we played a bunch of covers, punk covers, Black Flag, Discharge, just to fuck around. I spent a few days with him in Phoenix at that time auditioning. It was fun, man. It was just him and I, nobody else, just jamming, getting to know each other musically.
Got to watch my back, got to let my heart believe what they all fly. To reunite and try to find a better way. Fucking every changes everything.
I went home, got a call back a few weeks later. I came back and we kept playing and jamming more and writing more stuff. And that's when he got his bass player, Marcelo Diaz, who's been with them and known him for a long time. He's been with them from Sepultura. He was a lighting technician for Sepul, but he's also a bass player. He comes from another Brazilian band called The Mist. Max already had a relationship with Marcelo for the longest time, so it was a no-brainer for him to get him in the band. So when I got back, it was just the 3 of us. And then Lucio from Chico Science from Brazil, he comes in a little bit later, like a week before we went into Indigo Ranch is when he came into the fold. And then it really started to develop the sound.
Right, and so with the 4 of you together, there was only 1 week of rehearsing before entering Indigo to record.
Yeah, because before that, Max has already had sketches of all these songs. We just walked into the room with him and just kind of worked them out. And then Lucio added his whole vibe over it.
And what a vibe that was.
That's
Oh, man.
so different. I mean, it's such a different animal. Like to mix his like soulful, almost Jimi Hendrix-y style guitar playing, funky kind of sound over this heavy metalish tribal sound. It was incredible. I never heard anything like it. And to be there to watch it happen, it was incredible.
Yeah, and I can imagine that's one of the elements that explains why the first Soulfly album is so unique in comparison to the rest of the back catalogue. It definitely has something magical about it.
We all recorded in the same room together. We didn't have a click track, and we all recorded to tape. You had to get that take. There's no fudging that. We would do 2 or 3 takes of each song and then go with 1 take that was solid from top to bottom and then record over that.
That Indigo vibe, man.
Yeah.
Before we deep dive into stories from the studio, let's talk a little bit more about first impressions. Meeting Marcelo and Lucio and that initial chemistry, rehearsing that week prior to entering the recording of the album.
It felt so natural. There was nothing contrived about it. It wasn't forced. It was so natural. It's hard for me to really explain. There was instantaneous spark between everybody in that band when we first got together. And I can remember one particular instance when we started with the song No Hope, No Fear. That was completely out of nowhere. That just started with the riff, how you hear it. And we all jumped in exactly how you hear it. That's how that song started. That song basically wrote itself. Max just pulled that riff out of him just like that. I think that was probably one of the first riffs he started with when he just walked in a room, plugged his guitar and just started checking his guitar, which was that riff. And we're like, this is great. And then the song just wrote itself.
Amazing.
To me, that's a really magical song. I mean, Max's lyrics on that, his deliverance of how he sings it, and just the grind and the grime of that track is really special to me. I love that song. Even to this day, when I sound checking my drums with whatever band I'm in, I always play that drum riff.
Cool.
It's a good sound check song for drums because he gives the sound engineer everything. He gives you the toms, a simple kick, snare, hi-hat beat, enough where you can hear the room's ambience and clarity and stuff like that. For me, it's a good sound check song for drums. I love that song. That's one of my favorite songs on that record.
It's interesting hearing about the jamming nature of the band dynamic. I'd love to hear more about the writing of the self-titled, as I've read that both you and Max co-wrote much of the music, which is really cool. But to put it into some sort of perspective, how much music was already written prior to you joining in 97? And from that point forward, what was the writing process like between yourself and Max?
Well, it's more actually between me, Max, and Marcelo together. But Max would come in with the ideas and the riffs, and then we would just all kind of work them out together. That's basically how the process was. What I remember, a lot of the music that we came up with together in the rehearsal room, it changed once we got into the recording studio. A lot of those riffs got augmented with Ross Robinson being there. He really helped us shape the band as well. I mean, I think Max will say the same thing. Ross definitely had an influence on everyone. He really just knew how to bring out the best in every musician. The rawness, the emotion.
The time has come. Speaking of Ross Robinson, I've read from Shannon Larkin and heard personally from Eloy Casagrande.
Amazing drummer.
Oh yeah, man, most definitely.
The thickest left hand I've ever seen on any drummer. Dude, that left hand is just relentless. That guy is insane.
Man, I've also been lucky enough to witness that power you're talking about in action when I was living with Sepultura in Sweden to document the recording of both Machine Messiah and Quadra, and most recently on tour with them, Sacred Reich and Crowbar last winter in 2022. And I love racking the guy's brains about as much as I can. And Eloy was saying that producer Ross Robinson is extremely demanding in the studio, in general, of course, but definitely when it comes to drums.
That guy's demanding.
Understatement of the year, I guess.
There's one instance, I can't remember what song it was, but it's somewhere in that record, you can hear him screaming in the background. I think I was actually in the middle of Bum Clot during that. You hear this, ah! That's him in the background. And at that point, I remember he threw like a chair across the room and it went over my head, over the fucking microphones. And I'm like, what the fuck? He wants a reaction out of you. So you got it. As I'm playing, you hear the beat sort of like not skip, but kind of get faster for a second and then slow down a little bit because holy shit, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, dodging a chair and all.
Anyone that's listening to this, go listen to that song and you can hear this high pitched scream in the background during that breakdown bridge in Bum Clot. That's Ross Robinson.
I bet there's actually a bunch of Ross Robinson screams spread out across those albums recorded at Indigo.
Yeah. He just wants to get a reaction out of you. And he's like, I just want to get in here and just pull it all out of you and make you feel this and da-da-da. And he did. It's great. I love that. I've never worked with anyone like that before or ever again. You know, him and I haven't worked together since that record. We haven't done anything ever. I'd love to see what it'd be like to work with him now. Different now, they're all older, but I'd be curious to see what he's like now to work with. Maybe one day, who knows?
Well, going by what both Eloy and Derek recounted after working with him on Sepultura's Mediator album, it sounds like things haven't really changed all too much.
Yeah. I'm sure it's probably similar to what I just said.
Did you have any history or experience with Ross Robinson prior to entering Indigo Ranch?
First time I met him. I've only known about him just obviously through all Korn and stuff, and by then he just finished the Limp Bizkit record, so the only two things that I knew he was involved in was Korn and Limp Bizkit. And I had no idea what I was getting into when I met him. When I met him and saw what his personality was like, he's just so over the top and so like mystical and crazy and just raw energy. And it's just, wow. Never met anyone like him before. He's great.
Are there any things you learn about yourself as a musician, as a drummer, from that experience working with him?
I never hold back as a drummer or as a person in general, but one thing he's definitely taught me from that experience is to not hold back even more. He's like, you're still holding back. I'm like, how? He's like, you're not punching hard enough, and not in a physical way. You're not giving enough. I don't believe it. And hearing those words, it just pushed me to give it even more. I mean, I even now in my room by myself, I fucking give it. I try to imagine there's 10,000, 20 people even. I'm fucking gonna give it, you know? He's taught me that. Never hold back, always give. Be mindful of that. And then after a while, it just becomes second nature.
Indigo Ranch deserves an episode in itself. You know, so many amazing albums, emotions, and moments in time captured within those walls. How did that type of energy tie in with the immense amount of trauma and emotion that was already surrounding the formation of Soulfly and, of course, the actual recording itself?
Yes.
With regards to the loss of Max's stepson, and then there was the passing of Chico Science.
So that much emotion, it definitely inspired my emotions.
Yeah, along with Roots, I definitely hold this album as Max's best and most emotional vocal output. It seems like only Ross has been that person, you know, to that guy to truly dig deep and get performances like that out of him. What memories do you have from your time at Indigo Ranch and being in the presence of so much emotion surrounding the recording of the album?
It made me step back and think about what they're going through as a family. It was rough, man. I mean, it was horrible. I felt so horrible for all of them, but it was great to be there to help them get through all that. Happy that I was there to help. I think we all were. It's heavy, man. So heavy. It was a therapeutic record for him. And just keeping all of what was going on in his world in my mind, I tried my best to give that energy, that positive energy that he was giving. You got to back that up.
In terms of your performance and what you were bringing to the table, was there that element of trust in the relationship with Max where he let you, do your thing?
He did. But what he did for me, though, before even going any further, he really influenced me a lot with a lot of music he was listening to and music he grew up with and music he was into at that time. He was really into this band called Chico Science, where Lucio's from. And there's a lot of drumming on there, a style of drumming called maracatu, which is a northern Brazil style of drumming, and obviously a lot of samba. So he loaded me up with all this music, and he basically was like, listen to this, get inspired with it, mix it with your style of playing, which is at that time was more like punk metal drumming. So he's like, mix it together. Basically see what you come up with, and that's what you hear on the first album. And the advice I was getting from Ross to like really don't hold back, give, you know what I mean? All that came into play and turned me into the drummer I am now. I was listening to the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack album while recording that record, so there's a little bit of that in there. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's in there.
Cool.
Actually, on Prejudice, you can hear that. There's definitely a kind of a disco vibe to it. I was listening to ABBA, Dancing Queen, and Tavares, and Bee Gees. I mean, that's all in there. Listening to all that music definitely helped with my approach in drums.
You mentioned No Hope, No Fear before, but what other cuts from Self-Titled are you proud of or hold dear?
I would say Tribe. That's a good one. That went through a bunch of changes. Tribe sounded a lot different prior to the studio. The version of Tribe you hear on the record, we kind of made that one happen and come together a bit more when we went to record it. We changed a bunch of stuff and threw out a bunch of drum parts. There used to be some double bass stuff on there that just didn't work, and we just got rid of it. Actually, there was some double bass on some of those songs, but we just got rid of a lot of it because we just wanted to keep it steady and punchy. Fire I really love because that was basically just a jam. The main riff was the main riff, but everything else after that, I think we all came up with that on the spot.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
I think we did that song a couple times. We did 2 or 3 takes of that, and that one take might have been like the middle take or something. And that whole middle area was just an improv jam. We were all in the same room. We're all looking at each other when to stop, when to change. So that's pretty special. Same thing with Prejudice. That song was all written as it is, but then at some point, like at the end, where it kind of breaks down and gets louder and breaks down and gets louder, that's all jamming. I love the jam aspect and the free aspect of the record. I can remember from my point of view playing, Max would be to my right in front of me facing me, Marcel will be on my left facing me, and then there's Ross in the middle facing me. We're just all at headphones and just going at it. It was great. Just coming up with parts right then and there and making the songs even better from where we were at when we were at the rehearsal studios.
Fire! Fire!
was cool. Max also would do vocals, but he didn't do lyrics. He'd do this crazy like just like the rhythm of the lyrics, and then he writes the lyrics after the fact. Something like that. It was pretty cool. He had a really rhythmic way of singing that inspired a lot of the changes and a lot of the drumming and a lot of the riffs. Like I would work off of his vocals, vice versa, his guitar playing.
Yeah, there must be something extremely contagious when it comes to feeding off each other's energy and being in the atmosphere of that room.
Yeah, definitely. And I learned a lot in an sound engineering approach too. I learned a lot in that scenario, just watching how Ross and the other engineer, Chuck Johnson, set everything up. Learning more about how he's using the compression on this U87 microphone that's just outside the live room with the door slightly cracked open. That's the sound that you're hearing in the background too. On the drums, you're just like kind of vibe. It's in the background. I think they also had a customized Jensen board. I think there was only maybe one or two in existence. They had like a couple 3M 24-track machines and a lot of old outboard gear, some Neve stuff and some old reverbs and effects and a lot of cool stuff they had in there to work with. Cool thing about this record, I got to meet my idol producer engineer Andy Wallace, who worked on this record.
Of course, yeah, and his history with Sepultura stretches back to producing Chaos AD.
Oh yeah, I was living in New York at the time, and I remember Max knew I was like a huge Andy Wallace fan. He's like, dude, you should go down there and meet him at Soundtracks, listen to one of the mixes. I'm like, fuck yeah. So I went down there, met him. He was just mixing No Hope, No Fear. I'm just blown away that I'm in the studio and there's Andy Wallace. And at that point, he's mixed the 3 legendary Slayer records, Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, Season Abyss, Nevermind by Nirvana, Jeff Buckley, Grace album. I mean, so all that's going on in my mind as I'm in the studio watching him mix a song. It's just like, wow. And just seeing his setup, really simple. He just uses the SSL desk and he has just a couple pieces of outboard gear and that's it. Like a harmonizer, an AMS reverb, a couple SPX 90s, a Roland delay, a couple PCM 42s, really simple setup. And he mixes super quiet on NS 10s. I'll never forget that. And just being in that room, watching him do that, I learned instantly what to do when you mix. You know what I mean? Mix was finished, he had his glasses on, he turned around, he was like, well, now you know how everything works. You know I'm gonna have to kill you, right? Back to mixing. Remember him saying that to me, I was kind of like,
yeah, well, I mean, they often say don't meet your heroes, but that sounds like a good one.
Yeah, he was so cool. He's so cool, he's so East Coast, we totally hit it off. It was great. Later on, like, man, thanks for letting me be a fly on the wall for a mix and meeting Andy Wallace. That never would have happened if it wasn't for Max. Max had this really cool vocal mic he sang through called the Battleship mic. It's like this round little metal mic thing that had this grate over it. Max would do a lot of his vocals over that. It had a really cool sound to it. Kind of a natural distortion.
Guest spots have somewhat become a staple when associated with Sepultura. KSAD invited Jello Biafra to collaborate on Biotech is Godzilla, and these concepts of collaboration went to the next level on 96's Roots, with Mike Patton, Jonathan Davis, DJ Lethal, David Silvera, and Carlinos Brown of Chico Science. And Sepultura have continued this with most albums, notably Against and Nation, and in quite possibly the most unique concept to date, Sepulquatra, a live quarantine collaboration album released in 2021, including contributions by members of Megadeth, Testament, Anthrax, System of a Down, Trivium, Devin Townsend, and Sacred Reich, to name a few, with guest contributors performing Sepultura songs alongside Derek, Andreas, Paolo, and Eloy from their individual locations around the world, and recorded to form one cohesive track. Backtrack to 1998, Max definitely chose not to shy away from collaborations and help from friends and peers, something that would continue in a similar fashion on the sophomore Primitive. Soulfly featured Burden, Dino and Christian from Fear Factory, Fred Durst and DJ Lethal from Limp Bizkit, Chino Marino from Deftones, Benji Webb of Skindred, Eric Bobo of Cypress Hill, and members of Chico Science.
That's a lot of nuts!
This album obviously contains a slew of guest appearances. Was it all ever a bit surreal for you, to be a part of this new project with the ex-singer of Sepultura and surrounded by so many peers?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I never thought I'd be getting to this level, because before that, I was just playing punk rock and stuff like that. And I'm proud of everything I've done with my other bands previously. But Soulfly was definitely the first band that got me into another level, doing these big tours and playing the festivals and stuff like that. I never done anything like that before that band. The only other band that I did play the big festivals with and did a lot of touring with was with Shelter. I was playing with them for a while before joining up Soulfly. They were the first band I played with that I encountered playing in front of 60,000 people. And that was at Dynamo Festival in 1996.
Man, I can't imagine.
It's funny, Max and I ran into each other during that run. Both Sepultura and Shelter were crossing paths because we were playing a lot of the European festivals like Roskilde and stuff like that. And I think the conversation of, we should do something together one of these days started around there too.
And then just follow all the breadcrumbs, right?
I didn't think I was going to be doing anything with him a year later. Yeah, because we're talking about, industrial music and da-da-da-da. He's saying like, I did the Nail Bomb thing. It'd be cool to do something like that later. I'm like, yeah, it'd be great. He's like, you do all this remix stuff, it'd be cool. We should collaborate on something one of these days. I'm like, yeah, it'd be great, man. I'd love to. A year later, I get the call to do it, an actual band with them. I wish I actually had Max here with me to help me remember some of this stuff, because he obviously got a really good memory with all this stuff from his point of view, you know what I mean? There's other things that was going on that I wasn't around for that he could obviously answer. I can only answer to questions of things that I'm aware of. Because I'm in the background just like playing drums and just like getting everyone's vibe and trying to like mix it into mine. And maybe one day him and I could have a conversation, interview with someone about it. One of these days it'd be cool to reminisce about some of this stuff. Them and I had some great times with it. We're both kids, we're both 20 something. It's a good time.
So, in the vein of reminiscing about the jamming aspect of everything, do you have any particular memories from the recording of the instrumental title track?
I remember we recorded that outside. It was at nighttime. The way the studio was set up, it was the recording studio, and then there was a chateau where all the band would stay. We would all set up in the middle. A couple mics. I can't remember how many channels or mics that Ross had out there, but I would imagine he might have had like 6 or 8 maybe. And he just set us all up. I think we jammed that song a couple of times, And then I think maybe the last take, whatever, he used that, and then they build on top of that. All that backwards guitars and all that stuff like that, that came later. But the core of the jam, like the drumming, some of the guitar work, that was there. And then they added all the other stuff later.
Really do love hearing all these stories from different guests about their experiences recording up in the mountains. What were your first impressions of Indigo Ranch when you arrived?
My first impression was, holy shit. I mean, I never would imagine to record in such a situation or a scenario like that, especially in the Malibu Canyon. And then learning that was an old hunting lodge that supposedly Clark Gable, W.C. Fields used to hang out in, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, I think Moody Blues, Neil Young, people, they all used to own that place and record there. Hearing about that was just mind-blowing. Never thought I'd be recording in something like that. It was a beautiful area. You had the canyon there, you could see the ocean, never seen anything like it. And unfortunately, it's not there anymore. I wish it was, because I would love to come back there and record. I love the sound of it.
Were you around during any of the guest spots as they took place in the studio?
I think I was there for maybe 2.5 weeks. I was there actually when Fred Durst showed up, but I wasn't there when he did the vocals to Bleed. I was there for the first day he was there, then I left. And then after that, obviously Chino came in, did his thing. I was there when Benji was there. We were all together in the room doing that.
Nice.
Rock and roll camp.
In the spirit of collaborations, let's talk about the music video for Bleed, featuring Fred Durst. How was that experience shooting, I believe, your first professional music video?
Yeah, that was a great video. That was the first music video I've ever been a part of, actually. I think that was filmed downtown LA, if I'm not mistaken. I was in some warehouse. I mean, just to watch how it's made, you know, the production and the direction and everything. I'd never been part of a music video ever until that one. I couldn't wrap my head around, like, what am I doing? I'm not playing for real. I'm playing with these white pads on my drums? Really? Okay. I'm playing with cymbals that are welded together, so when you hit them, they're dead? Okay. I was like, what the hell is that? Everything's all... I'm like, this is horrible. Obviously, within a few seconds, I figured it out, and okay, I get it now.
From memory, I believe you were wearing an Amen singlet in that music video?
Damn. Because Casey and the rest of the Amen guys, they showed up to that video shoot, and Ross Robinson. And actually, that's not a singlet, it's an Amen sticker. I was wearing my singlet. I go, man, wish I had an Amen shirt. And he's like, I have a sticker, put it on your shirt. I'm like, that's a good idea. Shh, there you go. It was a lot of fun, that video.
Action.
We've only known each other, really known each other for a few months by that point. We're all still getting to know each other. All of us Soulfly. It was great. It was really cool.
And so did you have a chance to hear mixes of the songs with the guest spots before the official album release?
I heard it when the rough mixes were happening. I remember Max sending me stuff after the fact, and he's like, hey, check this out. That was great. He would send me like cassette and stuff like that. Cassettes.
I've never been there, but I read about it in a book.
I still have the cassettes that he sent me back then. I still have them. A few years ago, when the pandemic started, I was like going through all my stuff, and I did post on my Instagram of, look what I just found. rough mixes of the album with just Max's name. It just said Max Cavalera, no Soulfly, nothing. Yeah. It's all in his handwriting. It's like, wow, holy shit, that's so cool. When we got together, we didn't even have a name. It was just him, you know.
Oh, well, what are you gonna do? Life's a bitch and then you die, right?
Sometimes. Sometimes life's a bitch and then you keep living.
He didn't get the name until after, well, we played one show as this band, but the name of the night was called Soulfly, and that was to celebrate Dana's life. Deftones was on this bill, Snot was on this bill, but Soulfly wasn't Soulfly yet. It was just like Max and Friends, basically. But the name of the night was called Soulfly. We submitted to the name literally just weeks before the record's supposed to come out. He's like, I need a name for this band. And he looked over at the flyer. He's like, that's it, Soulfly. There it is. What do you think of Soulfly? Like, to everyone, we're like, that's the perfect name. Because this album's basically dedicated to and about their son. So, of course, it makes total sense. And it's a really different sounding name. It's not like your typical name for a band.
Yeah, it's a great name for sure. Did Lucio play that first live show, or did Soulfly ever play any shows with him before he returned to Brazil?
No, we never played any live shows with him. That show, Dino Cazares was playing guitar.
Were there any plans originally for Lucio to stay on with the band before he decided to go back home?
I think he wanted to stay with Chico because at that time Chico he died like that year, and they just wanted to keep going with his band, you know. And they did go on. They're still together. He doesn't want to leave his band. That's his thing. Understandable.
I've just always wondered if he was brought in more on the premise of being a studio member in order to get the album done and released, because Logan Matter would, of course, enter the fold soon after to tour Soulfly around the world.
Right. That's something that Max put together. At that point, I was just as much of a guest as he was. I just joined the band, so anything that was put together was strictly through him and Gloria. They put that together.
There was quite a bit of touring during those first years of Soulfly, supporting Snot, The Song Remains Insane tour, Strangeland tour, Ozfest 1998, on the same bill with the likes of Black Sabbath, Motorhead, Pantera, Slayer, Megadeth, System of a Down, Seven Dust, Snot, Fear Factory, Cold Chamber, Head PE. What? I even remember you rocking a Head PE skater belt in a Soulfly promo picture I had on my bedroom wall. I swear I saw
the right thing.
So many dudes and bands wearing that belt in promo shots.
They had good merch. Yeah, that belt was everywhere. That was a cool belt.
Awesome. After the Soulfly show with Dino, did Logan Matter pretty much just come straight into the fold and then you guys just hit the road to tour?
Yeah, once we started to get the tour booked, yeah, that's when Logan came in.
We were talking about personal studio favorites earlier, but yeah, did you have some favorites to play live?
I loved playing all of the songs. We didn't play the whole record. We played, obviously, a handful of Sepul songs. But yeah, my favorites were always Eye for an Eye, No Hope, those two together. I loved playing Tribe live. That was always fun to play. I can remember those three the most. We played No.
No is probably one of my favorite songs, man.
No is always great. That's a closer. Fire, that was cool because that was different every night, especially that middle jam. Sometimes a little long, sometimes a little shorter. And then we do the drum jam thing. All of them come out with the big tambour drums and have that jam going on. That was great. I always loved doing that. There's one time we got to play Prejudice with Benji live, which I always thought was incredible. I always loved that song, and it was great to play with him. I think we got to play that with him a couple times. That's one of my favorite songs. I love Prejudice. That's another one that just kind of wrote itself, too. We basically came up with that song in the studio in Indigo Ranch. We didn't write that prior. That's all feel, all jam. I'm just realizing that right now because Benji flew in. He was, singing as we're all playing, and it just all came together.
3 singles and successful album sales and touring, the EP Tribe was released in Japan, the UK and Australia following gold album record sales and Soulfly's Big Day Out performances. The EP charting at number 55 in Australia, along with the self-titled peaking at 33. So yeah, there obviously was a lot of love and support coming from Australia for Soulfly in those formative years. And I imagine you would have felt this and some amazing energy touring the country as part of 99's iconic Big Day Out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a really exciting period of time for Big Day Out in terms of the caliber of acts on the bill and what it provided music lovers and fans of alternative music. What are your memories from touring Australia on the famous Big Day Out festival?
Everything about it. It's just great. First off, never been to Australia by that point. That was the first time ever. I never imagined I'd ever be going to Australia, let alone playing such a big festival like that. I think that was probably one of the biggest amount of people I've ever played in front of at that point. It must have been like 80,000 people. Melbourne Showgrounds, especially, that show. The show in Sydney, that's what you see on YouTube. That was the big one. I remember that. We were in that stadium. I couldn't fucking believe it. That was absolutely amazing, that show. I'll never forget it. Just the energy of the crowd, like you said. I've never seen a crowd in unison, so in unison like that. It was so hot and humid. I remember that show, Max lost his teeth. Someone threw those big, like, flashlights. I don't know if the flashlight hit him or the flashlight hit the mic stand and hit him in the mouth, but it knocked out his fucking bridge. He didn't have front teeth for like the last 4 or 5 songs. And I remember at one point, he was turning around, looked at me and grinned at me. I was like, oh, the fuck? And you can see it in the video. If you watch the whole thing, you see later on he has no teeth. He starts grinning at the camera with no teeth. It's amazing. And he kept going, man. He just soldiered through. He's a fucking tank, that guy. Nothing can stop that dude, you know? Most people will be like, oh my God, oh. Not him. He's like, fuck it. And I can remember later, once we were finished, I think our tech at that time, Rat, his guitar tech, found his bridge on the stage. Went back to our dressing room, and I can remember Max took a thing of like vodka in his mouth or something like that, swished it around, spit it out, super glued it, and stuck it back in his mouth. I just remember all of us were like, wow, okay.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, it was rock and roll. I was like, holy shit, that was incredible. Right on. Mad respect for that. But that whole tour was amazing, man. I can remember the beginning, though, was a little rocky for me. The first show was in New Zealand. I'm flying from New York, doing a connecting flight to LA. The flight from New York to LA was delayed. So when I got to LA, I had no connecting flight to New Zealand. So I had to wait the next day. I had to be put up in a hotel room and then get on the next flight to New Zealand. So I didn't have a day to acclimate. So when I got to New Zealand, I was already all sketched out from a 15-hour flight. And I remember getting picked up from the airport and then driven right to stage. And then I went on an hour later. I landed, I went right to stage and played all like, ugh. So yeah, that was a serious wake up. I'll never forget that. It was a great show too, but I was pretty sketched out and freaked out because of the situation. They were freaked out, like, oh, I wasn't sure if their drummer was going to make it or not. I don't know, what are we going to do? I just made it.
In episode 22, Sonny Mayo referred to the Big Day Out as the Big Day Off. Because of the free time between shows, he was able to explore quite a bit. Was that the same for you? Did you have a chance to wander around the cities at all and take some time in Australia for yourself?
I can remember we did, yeah. I think we had some of our own shows in between too, which was great. I saw a lot of good stuff. We went from New Zealand to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth. That was the tour. now Australia is my second home because that's where my wife is from.
Oh man, explored indeed.
So I'm sort of Australian. I spent a lot of time in Melbourne, so Melbourne's basically my second home.
Well, man, we're happy to have you.
Appreciate it.
Prior to Soulfly, you formed Thorn with Stephen Flam and ex-Nausea guitarist John Jesse. After your fourth live performance, Thorn signed to Roadrunner Records, and this would prove to be the beginning of an impressive back catalogue of work released under the label. Obviously Soulfly, Stone Sour, and of course the remix of Refuse Resist, which featured on one of the label's most successful releases, Chaos AD, and its Digipack Special Edition. Anyone who listens to this podcast will know Life Is Peachy is all about those epic Roadrunner years and their roster of amazing bands. So I'd love to talk a bit about the label with you, if you're up for it.
Sure. It's been a part of my career, pretty much my whole career.
Tracked him through 11 major cities on 4 continents and never come close, not once. This guy walks through the raindrops.
2005, you appeared as one of the drummers on the Roadrunner United compilation CD, the All-Star Sessions, playing on The Enemy, The End, and Baptized in the Redemption. All tracks being produced and musically written by Dino Cazares and yourself, with the song The End, of course, becoming the official single to represent the entire compilation. Roadrunner United was a project organized by the label to commemorate their 25th anniversary and was an amazing, highly ambitious, and original concept to furthermore celebrate Roadrunner's massive legacy and imprint. 14 captains were chosen to lead 57 artists from 45 past and present Roadrunner bands and produce and oversee the album's 18 tracks. Then Slipknot drummer Joey Jordison, Trivium frontman and guitarist Matt Heffy, Fear Factory guitarist Dino, and Machine Head frontman and guitarist Rob Flynn. Can you share some reflections from your time on the label's roster and how that accumulated to you being asked to join the Roadrunner United experience?
At that point, I kind of was about to just give up and start playing drums. Between the years of 2000 to like that year, 2005, I've tried to put together other bands and do this and do that. And I was actually part of some really good bands at the time. We had some really good material, but it just didn't seem to be going anywhere. So I figured, okay, I'm 35 now. I think I'm done. So I put the sticks down for a minute. I decided to work at my wife's hair salon. She's a hairdresser, and I was doing extensions. So I did that for a minute. And I got a call from Dino, and he asked me if I wanted to play drums. And I'm like, wow, yeah, of course I'd love to play drums on that. It was going to do one song with Nadia and one song with Andreas, one song with Paul Gray. I go, it's going to be great. You and I can write all the songs, and we did. And then that pretty much opened the whole floodgate for me coming back into the fold of Roadrunner and music. So we played that live show at Nokia Theater, and I got reconnected with a lot of people I haven't spoken to in a long time, and I got my name back out there, I guess. From there, I started playing with Sepultura. The reason why I was playing with Sepultura is because at that time, Igor and his wife just had a baby, and he wanted to sit out for the tour, so I covered that tour. And then from there, I connected with Corey Taylor and Nick Raskulenix, the producer who produced the Stone Sour album. They needed someone to come in and play some drums for their record.
Let's party.
So I went and did that after, and then I got the offer to stay with them as their drummer, be their new drummer, and then here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. Still so much more between Stone Sour and now, though.
Yeah, there's so much in that. I know I'm tripping over my words as I'm trying to explain all of it. It's just there's so much information, there's so many details and how the order of things happen, but I saw there was a little bit of hope. Maybe I should be playing drums again, and I did, and all this great things in front of me unfolded, and I just went with it.
Quite a crossroads moment, that sliding doors epiphany where, yeah, you could have hung up your sticks and that would have been that. but then the call comes from Dino and...
Drag me back in.
Well, yeah, a call that played a massive part in continuing your career, essentially for the rest of your life.
I'm really grateful for that phone call and grateful to him for calling upon me for doing this. I tell him that all the time whenever I run into him or when I talk to him. Like, hey, man, thank you for that phone call. I thank everybody for the phone call. I thank everyone that's ever gotten me to this point in my life, you know, whether it's Monty Connor or Howie Abrams, Andreas, Max, Glow, Corey, Dino, everyone involved for making me a part of their life and their projects.
And you just touched on this. Sepultura's 2006 European tour with In Flames following Igor Cavalera's absence. Considering your history with the band, what was that experience like for you?
Well, some of the songs I already knew prior, just from being in Soulfly. We played some of the songs, and I've listened to that band for so many years, and I love Igor's drumming and try my best to get it as close as I can to how he plays it. Just trial and error, listening to it over and over and over again, and watching how he plays it, and listening to what he's listened to. At least I know he's into Bill Ward. I'll listen to Bill Ward more. I love Bill Ward. He grew up in Brazil. I'll listen to more Brazilian music, stuff like that, and just really study his approach and just go for it and try to meld your style and his style as best you can, because you can never sound like somebody else. The best that you can do to mimic someone else is obviously play their parts, but put a little bit of yourself in there too, a little bit. I mean, you have no choice.
It's like looking in a mirror, only not.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
I'd just love to add that you're actual living proof a healthy relationship between both Sepultura and Soulfly can exist. And all of that stalemate noise and bullshit that comes from fans' vision and opinion is just so unnecessary and redundant by this stage. It can just be about the music, and in your case, if you connect with the people or the music, then it's just as simple as that. It's not about sides or even having to choose a side. It's okay to love Sepultura no matter what era, what lineup. If you like the music, that's what should speak to you.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Following the loss of their drummer Phil, Channel Zero announced October 2013 they would continue on, and this resulted in you joining the band as a session drummer and a new album, Kill All Kings. Obviously, there was a pre-existing chemistry between yourself and Mikey Doling, but this is one of many interesting examples when it comes to you entering a band dynamic. Yeah. Some years ago, I worked with Channel Zero in support of their album Exit Humanity, and a retrospective documentary was created under the same name. As with Sepultura, there is always a dynamic you're entering when either coming on a tour, in the studio, or even on a music video set.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
You have to find your place and flow amongst a chemistry of people that already have an established history, relationship, and an energy with each other and their crew. This is always unique, of course, and different with each band you work with. And I'm here just talking about myself coming into the fold with my camera. What's your process when coming into that type of history? An already established band and sound as either a session, touring, or official new member? Because, yeah, I mean, throughout your career, you've done this many times.
It's all a little different. I mean, with Soulfly, that was an open canvas. I mean, there's some molding here and there. Like I said, I listen to a lot more samba and some more traditional Brazilian music, and with the rhythms and stuff like that to really get that embedded in my way of playing. But for the most part, open canvas. Stone Sour, that was more, I had to back my personality style drumming wise and adhere more to their style of music, which is more hard rock, you know what I mean? And go by what they're doing and then try to put my personality in that. That's the challenge. And when it comes to covering for a drummer, for example, Vinnie Paul, which was really hard to do for a bunch of reasons. One, he's one of the most amazing drummers ever to be around, and he was a really good friend, and emotionally it definitely was awkward because it was sad thinking that he's not here anymore. You want to respectfully at least play it as close as you can to how he did it. So what I would do in a situation like that, obviously study his way of playing, listening, trying to get some drum cam videos if there is, and there was, thankfully, and see how his hands move. Listen to his influences of drummers so you get it. Try to learn some of his techniques. Like, for example, Vinny has a way of playing where he leads a lot with his left. I don't. I'm a right-hand lead drummer. He's a right-hand lead drummer, was a right-hand lead drummer, but he does lead with his left. Some of his drum fills, some of his double bass work starts with his left. And if you don't do it that way, it's not going to sound right. And I'm sure whoever plays his music knows that. I mean, Charlie Benante, I'm sure knows that, and he does that. You can hear when he plays it, it sounds like it. It sounds great. Also, the other good thing to do is to watch that drummer's live performance, because what they do live is what really matters. And that's what the band is used to. They're not used to playing a studio version, because who does? Nobody really does.
Right.
Even with Soulfly, I mean, we didn't play it exactly live as we did in the studio because it was all on the fly there. We embellish a lot. I mean, everybody does over time. Start doing different drum fills and different stuff that kind of works, stuff like that.
Racking of your brain continues. I've been lucky enough to have both Paul Fig and Sonny May on the podcast, who were the respective guitarists from that classic era lineup of Amen, one of my favorite bands at that particular point in time, 1998 through to 2002.
I've recorded with Amen.
Yes. Okay, so according to Amen's Wikipedia page, you're listed down as session drums between 2008 and 2015 and a live member from 2014 to 2015.
Correct.
Obviously playing the iconic Knotfest with Casey and Co.
Right.
Sonny informed me that you even did front of house with Amen on tour back in the day.
I did.
So what session work have you done with Amen over the years, and do you know anything at all about this mysterious, seemingly ill-fated recorded album from back in 2015?
It's still in the works. It's still sort of on hold. I mean, I can't really answer that. I could say there's 3 of us on that record. There's some tracks from Dave Lombardo playing drums. There's some track with Shannon playing drums. There's some tracks with me playing drums.
Man, I'm absolutely dying for it.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll see the light of day one of these days.
But so, yeah, okay, your tracks weren't produced by Ross Robinson then?
When I did my drums, I recorded them here at my place.
Right.
Ross wasn't involved, but I think he probably would get involved after the fact, after it's completed. But yeah, I recorded my parts. I think I did like 3 or 4 songs or something like that. Casey has all of it. I'm going to put it together one of these days. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, man.
I need to get in touch with him. Actually, I haven't spoken to Casey in a very long time. Maybe that'll be a topic we can discuss.
Yes, please.
Right.
Whatever happened to that album, man?
Hello. What's going on with that?
It's been nearly 20 years since their last official album release, Death Before Music, so it's definitely been a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I did a show with them though, yeah, like you said, in 2014 at Knotfest. We did do that. That was great.
Dude, I could also imagine that a lot of their stuff would be amazing fun to play live.
Oh God, yeah, so much fun. Larkin came up with so much cool drum patterns for all those songs. I mean, especially those 2 records. His drumming is incredible, especially on We Come For Your Parents. I love that record. He's a great guy. Shannon's great. We've known each other for years. He's awesome.
I mean, it really is, to me, all about serving the song. And, you know, I feel much better about that because I just don't want to follow certain trends that I see other bands following.
Looking back, what would you say are some of the main lessons you learnt about yourself as a result of your time in Soulfly and the experience recording and touring the debut album?
Yeah, learn about myself. I think you're constantly learning something new about yourself and making yourself a better person every day. We all change every day. I'm a different person from what I was 25 years ago. The only thing is the same as far as playing my drums. My approach to drums is pretty much the same. I like attacking my drums. I like to hear my drums fill a room, the ambience. I want to hear that slap back of the snare drum back in my ear. If I don't hear that, then I'm not hitting it right. That's how I test the room, how it sounds. Now we're talking. I learned how to keep myself healthy and eat better and stay on top of that.
I'll get all the sleep I need and I'm dead. Thanks for the dance.
The older we get, the more maintenance we need to do. So I've been maintaining myself this whole time, health-wise, since then to this point now where I'm at a nice level.
That's really good to hear. I need my running, man. It's so important to my well-being and balance.
You got to keep it up, man, especially when you're playing drums. You got to really look after yourself. You can't just play drums and that's it. You do have to hit the gym. You do have to do some yoga, something, you know what I mean? Keep that going.
Definitely. And so now with 25 years of retrospect, where does Soulfly's self-titled debut sit both creatively and personally within your back catalogue of work?
It's number one to me, besides the first album I ever recorded with the first band I've been with called Nausea. I recorded that in 1989. That's a very special record for me, but Soulfly, as far as like this part of my career, that's probably one of the most important records for me. Both of those records, very important. I'm really thankful to have been a part of that. I'm grateful to have been a part of that journey in that record. It's a very special record for me.
Nice.
It was one of the most special times of my life. I really feel strongly about and really hold really, really close to my heart.
And of course, you would return to Soulfly in 2001. Your time drumming with them would stretch over to another record, the band's third release, in the shape of 2002's aptly titled 3. This time with Mikey Doling on guitar, who would join the ranks with Max and Marcello on Soulfly's sophomore Primitive. If anyone listening is interested in hearing about this chapter of Roy's career, rejoining Soulfly, the dynamic of that lineup on 3, and memories from the Seek and Strike music video, then jump on over to the Life Is Peachy Patreon, where you can listen to the bonus interview under the Michael Bolton tier.
We can work it out.
But this, of course, has been a celebration for the 25-year anniversary of the self-titled. So, Roy, thank you so much for your time and energy and sharing your memories and reflections with us today.
Right on, brother. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Means a lot, man. And it's been amazing to learn more about another album from the Indigo Ranch Chronicles and the magic of that whole experience. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off and people can then go blast this album, hopefully after enjoying this interview?
Don't make me look like an asshole, okay? Now you got all this material to work with to make me really look like a fucking asshole.
Impossible. I don't think there's any way I can make that happen, man.
Yeah, that's all good. I trust you. You are an asshole. What are you talking about?
We have it, episode 24 of the Life Is Peachy Podcast, my chat with Roy Mayorga and 25 years of Soulfly's debut, plus quite a lot more. I hope you enjoyed it. A huge thank you to the Lip Virtual Tip Jar Patreon community, to Rami and Shane who are spinning the CD Discman tier, and Majika and Vaginator rocking the Michael Bolton tier. Absolute legends. If you're eager to find out what's coming up next, you can always head over to the Patreon where there are those Patreon perks, including early guest and album reveals and additional episode content, such as Roy reflecting on rejoining Soulfly for the 3-album cycle. Due to episode format and the use of music to celebrate these amazing albums, the Life Is Peachy podcast is not monetized. And as fellow content creator Grey Mads puts it,
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
If you'll allow me a minute to chill, I'd like to take a second to beg you for some money. Now, I'm no different from every other content creator who wants to shill their Patreon, but since I cover music-related topics and actually play snippets of the music I cover, most of my video catalog is unmonetizable. So if you enjoy the content I make and you want to support it, please consider throwing me $1 or $2 on Patreon. Regardless of how much, I'm going to keep putting these videos out as I genuinely enjoy to make them, but every bit of support helps.
Start the music. Any love over at Patreon really does help to make the necessary time that is required to write, record, and edit these episodes on top of my full-time job with Her Name Is Murder Productions. More support means more time, and in the end, more episodes for you.
It's science.
And with that being said, if this is your first time here and you enjoyed the podcast and its format, make sure you check back through the back catalogue of episodes. There are now 23 other immersive audio documentary styled episodes waiting for you. And on top of that, there is a new second channel, the Lip Mixtape Sessions, a more stripped back Q&A format podcast which already holds interviews with Australia's Sunklodo, producer Gigi Garth Richardson, Johnny Santos, Brett Epic Mazua, and Slipknot's Craig Jones. I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying their music. Thank you for sharing your time and energy with me and the rest of the Lip community today. It means so much, and I'm excited to keep bringing you more episodes every month for the rest of 2023. Feel free to post on the Facebook group what you're currently listening to, or tag me over on the Lip Instagram. I love coming across new music and I love communicating with you. Until we hang out again in May, have an amazing day and
see you at the party, Richter.
Bye-bye.
You know, I can eat a peach for hours.
This episode was written, edited, and produced by myself. Recorded from the comfort of my own home.
DIY style.
With each guest calling in from wherever they happen to be around the world at that particular time. The Life Is Peachy theme song is an original tune for this podcast, written by Tim Richardson.
The Life Is Peachy podcast is not monetized. All music rights and credits go to its rightful owners.
Further details can be found in the description of the specific episode. All artwork is original and illustrated for the Life Is Peachy podcast by Chris Lisa Liefting.